I remember opening night. I was there, and I remember the newspaper said, "Charlotte, tonight we are Major League."
I think the town saw the opener as something beyond just playing a basketball game. It was a strong signal that Charlotte had arrived as a big-time city.
This was unprecedented, and it was neat to be there and for people to say, this is ours.
There was just so much energy around an NBA game happening in the city of Charlotte.
It really was surreal to believe that we were finally on the big stage and finally had a team in the NBA, and that the NBA had recognized Charlotte as a city that was worthy of having a franchise.
Charlotte was demonstrating its support for, love of the NBA and the Hornets, and it was a terrific time.
Charlotte was an up-and-coming city from the standpoint of it had banking, it had NASCAR, but there was no team sport there, and they got their team, and people just got fired up.
Hello, Charlotte, and welcome to the National Basketball Association. I'm Jim Forrest, thrilled to be part of this historical night, Charlotte's debut into the big leagues of professional basketball.
There's a flood of memories. People wearing tuxedos to the game.
I've never seen so many people at a game wearing tuxes. It was like going to a wedding or something with about 100 groomsmen. And people were dressed up, and they just wanted to make it an occasion.
You know, people dressed up, they wore tuxedos, the ladies wore evening gowns, so it was a real interesting look for an NBA game.
If you didn't know better, you thought you were in Los Angeles or something, the way everybody was coming. It was a big deal for Charlotte.
It was like a college football game. Tailgating in the parking lot, the lead up to it, people coming out in tuxes. It was an experience. It was a first time deal, and people wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it.
At the time, since we encouraged it, it was a positive for all of us. It showed us that we were on the right track, and this is what the people would respond to.
It was just an electric, here we are situation. I remember Kurt Rambis, who they had gotten from the Lakers, and he said, I've been around the Lakers a long time, championships and around the league. I've never seen anything like this. And I think he was pretty well speaking for everybody in Charlotte that night.
There were these 24,000 fans or so in this too large building, which I thought was ridiculous in size. But of course, then they sold it out, and it was an extraordinary event.
There was a ceremonial tip-off, I think, with the first season ticket holder.
The world can thank me for turning them down on their first idea, which is me singing the national anthem. That ain't gonna happen. I said, guys, that ain't gonna happen. Plan B was then would you be willing to throw up the first jump ball, just kind of a little ceremony. It was like, I can do that.
Well, I knew we were playing Cleveland, the team that I came from. I knew they were a pretty good team with Brad Daugherty, Ron Harper, Mark Price, a lot of my buddies still today. But I was able to soak it in a little more because having a broken wrist, wasn't able to play. I was able to sit back and kind of watch the fan reaction. My teammates, maybe a little butterflies, a little nervous to go out for the first time.
For me, the first NBA game I ever went to, I played in. It was a whirlwind.
It was my first try at professional basketball, so you're a little skeptical at that, but I'd watched enough of it, so I think I was comfortable with it.
I was one of the most experienced employees there. At the age of 45, I'd had almost 30 years in pro sports. I was used to the pressure, and so from my standpoint, the evening went as planned. It was exhausting, but it was fun.
The biggest problem I had that night was wondering when we'd ever get our first basket, because our opponent, Cleveland, that night, I think had scored 8 points already, and we hadn't scored yet until Kelly Tripucka scored.
Daugherty had the rebound taken away by Tripucka.
But I just remember the roar of the crowd, how exciting everybody was. It was an event.
The atmosphere was incredible. And then we go in and we didn't play like everything seemed to be, but that wasn't what they were there for.
Most of the time leading up to the finish of the game, I was just praying that it would get over soon. And they didn't win the game. We lost by 40.
Unheard of. I think we lost by 40. It was not a fun game to watch as a player and watching my teammates. But it was a little different. Normally halftime, third quarter, nowadays the fans are gone. Everybody stayed until the final horn.
But in the final minute, as everything was winding down, and the fans did something unprompted. They just stood up and started applauding. And it grew and grew and grew to the point where when the final buzzer sounded, everybody was standing and they were cheering.
But as we walking out of off the court, the crowd just stood up and gave us a standing ovation.
And I'm thinking, this is not good. You know, if they start clapping for the other team after we lose, that's going to be a problem.
Walk in the locker room, everybody's like, what's going on? They couldn't understand why we were getting a standing ovation.
And I honestly thought they were cheering for Cleveland. You know, I thought they had turned on us.
Well, little do we know, after the Cleveland Cavaliers left the floor, they were still clapping. So we found out that they were actually cheering for us.
You know, this was like a lifetime achievement award that Charlotte had gotten an NBA team. The fans who had individually pulled for Carolina Duke, North Carolina State, Wake Forest, were now all collectively cheering for this one professional sports team.
But I think they were saying thank you for making Charlotte a major league town.
They were happy to have an NBA team here in Charlotte. They embraced us, and no matter what, they let us know that night that they were going to be behind us.
And from that moment on, you knew that we was in a special situation.
At least for me personally, that made you think that we've got to have some pride here. We've got to establish something and become a home court advantage. Establish that home court advantage. It could be something special here.
It really was kind of a highlight for me to see, hey, these people really love this team, you know, as I did. You know, just that sense of pride.
I don't think any other team has ever been introduced in the NBA that got that kind of reception. And for me, and for a lot of other people, just the spirit of that said a lot about what sports can do in a town to bring people together.